Good. Did any of you get to hear my friend Heather this morning with my wife? I've known Heather for a lot of years now.
A little more than 10 now.
That's crazy.
I know.
That. Did you tell our story at all?
Yeah, but not everyone was at Coffee with Linda, so we can do the short recap.
Let's do the short recap.
All right, the short recap is that I was a member of the Democratic National Committee and a legislator in Maryland. And
Big time.
in 2008, during the presidential campaign, when it was all coming down to superdelegates on who is it going to be Hillary or Barack Obama, they started calling all the superdelegates with celebrities, left, right, and center, to try to get you to commit to one person or the other.
So they had the big gay one called the other gay.
Yes, yeah. They were like, let's have Melissa call one of the gay ones.
Yeah.
And
I did.
meanwhile, I'm getting calls from Barack Obama, Hillary, Bill, Chelsea, everyone. I'm not taking or returning any calls because I'm in the middle of my legislative session. Oh, come on. But then Melissa Etheridge calls. And I decided that even with Melissa, I waited a couple months until my legislative work was done.
I was like, never didn't call me back. But then you did. And I was like, who?
Yeah. And wait, who? What? So I called her back, and we have this beautiful political conversation about everything under the sun.
You were such an intelligent woman, and I loved how natural she was and how her heart, as you will see, is in such a great place, a place that we wish our politicians would be at, our leaders, the ones who are representing people. That's what I saw in her. So we went to the 2008 convention together. She let me sit with the delegates. It was really fun. And she opened up her home when I was invited to Obama's first inauguration, and there were no hotel rooms, and so I went and stayed with her, became fast friends with her and her wife. We've done so much. We've traveled. She ran for governor of Maryland on pretty much the same thing that everyone won. All the progressives. Yeah, 4 years later, everyone's running. 4 years ago, she was like, "That's crazy lesbian talking about legalizing cannabis and stuff. That's crazy, you know." And then 4 years later, that's what everyone runs on. But she's always been ahead of the times. We from the kind of leader that she was when you were serving in Maryland to now, what you decided to do is infuse politics with spirit, with thought, with what she was, what she is, a thoughtful leader. And so over the years, as we've talked and grown and done some amazing things together, she has come up with Soul Force Politics. And yeah, she's changed. I mean, they're coming to her. Cory Booker recently talked to you. She worked for Jim Carrey.
John Kerry.
And John Kerry.
To be fair to Jim Carrey, he's in this vibration.
Yes, he is. He's absolutely in that vibration.
I've
Yes,
actually tried to get him on the show, so if you have any there, we'll talk to Jim Carrey too.
You know, that probably happens to John Kerry all the time. Anyhow, she's a great force in politics, Soul Force Politics, and we are here to bring this to you. So take it away, Heather.
Thank you so much, Melissa. For those of you who are fans of the show, I have to start out by saying hello and welcome to this edition of Soul Force Politics. I'm your host, Heather Mizeur, and with me tonight is none other than Melissa Etheridge. Part of what I want you to know is that you're kind of here at Melissa's church. Because in many ways, the influence that Melissa had on me in politics and with me spiritually. And by spirituality, let's be really clear. We're not talking about a religion where all faiths are honored, recognized, whether you have one or none. But we all are of spirit. We have an essence of being. And how we show up in the world matters. And how we show up in our politics particularly matters, because we're in a little bit of trouble right now, aren't we? And I know from the coffee this morning and some feedback from many of you as I've run into you throughout the day, I have a similar strain of feedback, which is, I really need what you're offering right now because I have so much upset in my heart. I have hate in my heart for what is happening. And I've never considered myself a hateful person, and I don't know how to handle all of the frustration, all of the chaos, everything that's going on in the world politically right now. And that's what we're here to help with tonight. Because before the end of the night, and I know last year's cruise, we had some people that voted for Donald Trump, and I'm going to ask no booing, no hissing, and I'm not going to presume that everyone in the room is concerned about the direction of the country under Trump's leadership, but I know there are a lot of you who are. And I'm going to suggest that before the end of tonight, you are going to leave here with a new perspective. Not that you're going to think that it's anyhow less frustrating or challenging, or that you aren't being called to stand up and be a part of the resistance. You are. But what we're going to help you do is show up with your light, to meet the darkness with the force of your personality that is for good in the world. Because too many of us have been pulled down to meet the darkness with our own darkness. And that's where we have upset. That's where we have anger. That's where we can't sleep at night. That's where we're crying over what's happening and how we feel like it's disturbing and changing who we are in our heart. So thank you for creating an entire boat full of people who are vibrating a different way. And let's talk a little bit about, from your perspective, how you can take the feeling of this encouragement to be kind and to be loving towards each other and engage that in that way in the world, not just when it's easy, because it's a boat full of people who agree with you and who are agreeing to be kind to each other and showing up with love. How do we bring that same force into the world when it's more challenging and we're around people who disagree with us?
It's all about our own self, I guess we could call it confidence. You know, your own self, what you got going with yourself. Because until that is balanced, everything's going to tip you up. You're going to get up first thing and you're going to fall over. You know what I mean? Like consciously, you're going to fall over, and then the whole day just rattles that way. So when I first started practicing this was around breast cancer, 15 years cancer-free. I realized that my health had gone south because my thoughts and my emotions and my stress and everything went south. Everything was just hard, and it's so funny when we get to in our 40s and we start kind of doing this grind, and we think of ourselves last. And I cannot emphasize enough that we can't do anything about anybody else anywhere out there. From Trump all the way down to your partner. You can't do anything until you've got it going on for yourself, until you find a balance, until there's that. Yeah, absolutely. I can't. Your health is your responsibility, and if you overlook it, you're doing that. I mean, you're hurting your loved ones. I have to put it that way sometimes. It's like, hey, doing it for yourself is doing it for everyone else. So when you ask, it always starts with just this balance, and there's a lot of programs that can talk about, your physical health and your food health and your mental health, and there's all these things, but those all come under just what are you thinking about yourself? Start there. Start with what are the first thoughts that this brain, it's the left side of our brain is usually in charge. Man, it's a problem-solving consciousness. It's just, let's go, you're late, all that starts. That's the mindfulness, that's the practice that helps you acquire more balance and love yourself more. Start with that voice. I started it by looking, I really did. I looked in the mirror every day And even when I didn't believe it, I'd go, hello, gorgeous. I would just start saying, because we have to start with, you gotta love what you're seeing. You gotta see beauty in the mirror. And I said it, and weeks went by, and months went by, years probably went by. Hello, gorgeous, hello, gorgeous. And one day I went, oh, I am gorgeous. Yes. I saw something that it did it in my brain. And I've always said, you have to believe it to see it. It's not, I'll see it when I'll believe it here. Wait a minute, am I saying that? No. Yes, you have to believe it to see it. So that's where it starts.
I always say that radical love is an inside job. You have to love yourself first, and that's the first most radical step. The number of people that I talk with on a regular basis who have that as a barrier to entry, it's so easy to be so hard on ourselves. We live in a culture that has inundated us with messages and images and thought processes that make us doubt and question everything about ourselves all day long. And that is not you. Your internal voice, your deep wisdom that is within, understands how perfect you are right now, just as you are showing up in the world. And when you go into a place in your heart to see that light and that love and that perfection that you are in the world, and you allow it to come forward, that is how you put love out into the rest of the world. When somebody is behaving awfully towards you, it's not about you. It's about them. And when you can regularly practice and understand that someone who's calling you a name, or who cuts you off in traffic, or who is awful to you in a meeting at work, has nothing to do with you. It's about their own anger, frustration, wounds. And so when we walk in the world in a way of understanding that we're just okay exactly as we are, and we can have compassion for the other person, and that, oh, you must be having a really hard day to be so angry. Instead of taking that anger on, then we walk with a different light. How many of you are familiar with, well, she's running for president now, but who isn't? I think maybe by the end of this cruise, I might declare that I'm running for president. But one of the many Democratic candidates for governor is actually a spiritual author named Marianne Williamson. And I just want to paraphrase for you a portion from her book, A Return to Love. And it's been misquoted throughout time as being a quote from other amazing people who've also said really wonderful things, like Nelson Mandela and Maya Angelou, but this is actually Marianne Williamson, and I'm only paraphrasing here. But she reminds us that our greatest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our greatest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
Exactly.
We ask ourselves, who am I to be talented and gorgeous? Fabulous and amazing. Actually, who are you not to be? You were born to make manifest the glory of the creation that is inside of you, and when you allow your light to shine, you unconsciously give permission to everybody else to do the same. And so part of what you are feeling on this boat is permission that everybody is giving to everybody else to shine your light. Okay? And this will work at home too. I promise you. It takes more practice. It's a little harder when you're not around everyone who's making it so easy and who is meeting it, because when you see light, your light shines. It's easy. You meet each other with your light. The real challenge right now is for us to still bring that forward when the darkness is there. Melissa, how do you deal with the chaos politically right now? What is your advice to everyone in the room on, oh my God, all these things that Donald Trump says and does, all of the horrible things that are happening right now in our country? It's really depressing me and getting me down. What advice do you give on how to hold that differently?
It starts with a worldview. It's funny, sometimes I have trouble where I should drop in on how I got to the point where I started thinking that way. But when you understand that our world, our reality, all this consciousness happening right now is a dual. It's duality. It's a dual system. There's light and dark. We wouldn't have anything if there wasn't a positive and a negative. That's the way it all works, and that's the way it will always work. That's the way this game was built. This mainframe. You have ones and zeros. You have light and dark. You have love. You have fear. And these two shades. It's the yin yang symbol. The ancients, they figured this out. They were way beyond where we are. But we like to make things, and so we make things. But when you understand that darkness has to exist, that there is no world without it, then it must be, if darkness always exists, maybe it's how I perceive it that is giving me the discomfort. What story am I telling? What am I saying? But it's the truth. What is your truth? Well, the truth is, and then I tell a different story, and I come from love. And the practice, when you practice love, when you practice radical love, it's how do I look at everything, light and dark, as love. And it's like shining a light on something. All of a sudden the dark isn't quite as dark. You see, there's a male and female force in the world, and then there's lots of beliefs that come from that. And the whole Trump era, I'm sure is what we will call it, I believe, is the end of and I say male as an energy, not as genitalia. It's an energy, and it's an energy that believes in, us and them, and it's a hierarchical thought that only the top guy gets everything, and everybody else it's a pyramid kind of a thought. That thought that we've been under for a few hundred years now, a couple thousand, that thought is coming to an end. And you can study astrology, and there's a lot of esoteric thought, and there's a lot of teachings that which I have read wonderful books that help me understand this better. We are reaching the end of that. So to come to an end of that, you have to have, it's like a great story is ending in front of us. That this crazy thing happened to America, and I start thinking that, we are going to change because of this. And when I hold that thought, we are going to change. Not only are we going to change, we are in the midst of changing. I will always remember, and I made sure I said it to everyone I saw that day, the day after his inauguration, millions of people around the world took to the street. Millions, to show that they love one another. Millions. What else would make us all do that? I will add one more little thing to this that might help to understand how healing something like the inauguration, the January 2017, that inauguration, and then the day after, there's a group, and I forget people's names. I'm just like that. There's a group that studies the electromagnetic energy of the Earth. They have these things, satellites, and they study. And they have now been doing it for, it's a good 20, 30 years that they've had it out there studying. And it has shown that the electromagnetic field of the Earth changes at different times. When 9/11 happened, there was a big push in the electromagnetic field. And it was because every human being was feeling. And we have our own, this is science, this is not la-la talk, it's actually science. It's crazy.
It's quantum physics,
yes,
y'all.
It's quantum physics. There is an electromagnetic field that we all have. And and they've studied this, so 9/11, the day after the inauguration, that energy pushes us forward into our minds going, that's where I want to be. That's who I want to be associated with. I believe in love. I do not believe in fear. because that's the duality, basic duality we live in, the dark and light, love and fear. So that's a long answer to your question, but it is how I have to break it down to that much. I can't just keep telling myself, well, it's going to be all right, it's going to be all right, because then you have to believe it.
In that dualistic system, it pushes us to make a choice in that moment. And contrast is a really beautiful teacher. And so if we think about what's been happening since that inauguration, all healing must come from bringing the darkness up first. This includes our own self-healing. So often what we are still injured by is what is hurting us because we keep it tucked down in the dark and we're not willing to be vulnerable, to bring it forward, to shine a little light on it, to look at it, and to let it be transformed. And the issues of the day that have been plaguing our nation since its birth have been pushed really deep down underground as well. And many of us were content to walk along believing in certain illusions that we now understand weren't so. It was easy, particularly a person of white privilege, to think, well, we elected a black man president, so clearly racism has been dealt with in a pretty important way, right? I'm not saying I totally believe that, but I'm just acknowledging that it was easy for us to give ourselves credit for coming further than we really had. We needed a Donald Trump and his anger and the energy that he was encouraging to unearth a Charlottesville, to bring forward an understanding about how much more healing we need to do as a people and as a country to get at these fundamental underlying issues. And we are starting to have more important conversations on every issue imaginable than we ever did. When I was running for governor in 2014, I was before Bernie Sanders, I was talking about all these things, and everyone treated me like a crazy progressive lesbian that, just, it was impossible to achieve the things I was saying we could do together. And thank you. And now, some of the same people that thought it was totally crazy that I was proposing these things are actually enacting them 4 years later. It's just about having an advanced vision of what needs to be. It's about laying a consciousness. And if you think about what's been happening with Donald Trump, some other silver linings, unfortunately, it took us electing a pussy-grabbing president for the Me Too movement to come forward. Because how long have we as women, and your mother and her mother and her mother and her mother before her and that grandmother, we are carrying lineages of abuse that has been unaddressed. And we have failed to stand in our power to rise up and say no more. And this has happened now. Your daughter and her daughter are not going to be subjected to the same things that we just were okay living with for generations. So thank you, Donald Trump. And tongue-in-cheek, obviously, not him, but this energy. And it's okay. It's here to help us heal. It's here to prompt us. It's here to prod you. Get off the couch. Be engaged. Go vote. Why do we have the greatest democracy on the planet, but only 50% of the people show up to the polls? You have the power. And this is the era that we are in understanding how much power we hold. I would love, Melissa, for you to talk about the wisdom within us, our ability to create, the power we have to create and manifest things and to push away illusion. You've taught me so much about this. Like, I'm only sitting here really regurgitating for you all the things I've learned from her over a decade now and have been able to apply in the political realm. And I'm really just so blessed to have you sitting here with me doing this conversation. Thank you so much.
What a dream. No, we talked about this 10 years ago, how much we wanted to share what we were feeling, what we were believing. And so your question was,
how we can manifest, that we have so much more power than we ever thought possible, and that we are able in our own small life, in your own family, in your own personal, professional life, manifestation and creation can come from within. Talk about that.
Again, it starts from wherever you want it to start, and it's never too late to start, especially those of us who got very comfortable. I was very comfortable. My Pop-Tarts and soy lattes and power bars. And I was very comfortable thinking I had to take everything on. And it starts with a conversation with yourself. I can't emphasize how little worth it is to be ashamed or blame, or shame and saying, oh, it's all my fault, or I can't do it. Any of those. It's why dieting doesn't work. It's why anything like, oh, I'm going to go do this thing now, and then you don't do it that one day and you feel bad. It is worse for you in whatever you're doing. If you're trying to get better health or just better organization, it is far worse for you to feel bad because you didn't do something than it is just not to do it altogether. What you have to start doing, I would say before any diet, before anything, is change how you think about yourself in any situation. Once again, in the mirror, I mean, break it down. The thing about little notes on the refrigerators, that works. Positiveness. I mean, it sounds like, oh, it's easy to talk about that, but this is basic, just, I like my shoes. That's not, you're talking about the feet, that's, it's a not so newlywed joke. But my feet, I love my shoes, right? And gratitude. There are things, there are just ingredients that you have to have first before you can even start, purposefully manifesting. But you will see that when you put, I promise you, when you put anything good in, then good goes out, and then you see it. Promise you that. That's how it worked. I was able to start this sort of work when I was on chemotherapy. I was on chemotherapy for about 3 months, and it's awful. And I just think none of us should have to go through it. I know a lot of us have, but it should just be. I look forward to it being a thing of the past. But what it did for me was it quieted my mind. It stopped my whole life that I was carrying with me and going uphill with. I let it all go. It became completely just, this is what life is. This is this stillness. So I would say stillness is an ingredient. Stillness. Give yourself stillness every now and then. And stillness can be anywhere. You can be still. Go in the bathroom if you can't get away. Just be still. However still looks to you. There's no special, I need this incense or I need that. Just whatever it feels. Use your own feeling as your guide. And do what makes you feel good. You might think, oh, well, you're telling me to be selfish. Yeah, I'm telling you to be selfish. Do it. Your family will dig you. Your partner will love you. There's nothing sexier than taking care of yourself. Nothing. Whatever that looks like to you, There's no, because the minute you say, I should do this, you put should, you hear yourself saying should, stop. You go do whatever makes you happy, whatever it is. I cannot emphasize that. We've been told too much. Oh, you have to do this, or this is the way you're supposed to do it, or you're supposed to do 30 sit-ups a day, or whatever, whatever those rules are. No, search for your joy. There's a path there. Find it. Then you will start seeing manifestations. Then you'll start, look what came to me. I didn't even have to try.
Yes. Well, because when you find that stillness, you give an opportunity for that still voice within to come forward. That's where your wisdom is. And in the stillness, preferably, I'm a big proponent of nature. Get into some nature, because the wisdom that is in the ancestors of the trees and the plants and the Mother Earth herself will reinforce your own natural intuitive capabilities. We don't give ourselves enough credit for being able to tap in and understand everything that's going on around us all the time. We distract ourselves from that knowledge constantly with our iPhones, with our addictions of choice. We numb ourselves out with food, sex, drugs, alcohol, internet. All those things can be delightful in moderation, but when we notice that we're turning to it because we don't want to deal with how we're feeling about something inside, that's your clue right there. Your power resides in the pause between stimulus and response. And I want you to remember this. I'm going to repeat it and I'm going to talk about it a little bit, okay? Your power resides in the pause that you take between stimulus and response. When somebody says something to you and it causes you to want to have a particular kind of reaction, if all you do is blow your top and react or tweet as our president does, that's giving away all of your power. And it's responding in a way that doesn't honor your wisdom. If you take a moment and think about it and ask whatever is showing up to you to be your teacher, you will see a different response. You will navigate a different way. And as you start doing that regularly over and over and over again in how you relate to yourself, and how you relate to your partner, strangers in the boat, a coworker that drives you crazy, if you continually navigate that space and think about how you're going to respond and engage with the spirit of the universe around you that is always working towards your best, highest, most brilliant self, you will bring that light forward in ways that you never thought were imaginable. Right now, we're just being real lazy about it, in part because we haven't been taught enough about it. Because it's just so much easier to just numb it over, exit out, indulge the feeling that comes forward, and just let that release happen. How often do we ever feel fulfilled by that immediate knee-jerk response that we have? How often are we feeling later like, geez, like I made the situation worse when I did that? You have the power to make a different choice. And I know that this comes up for all of us, and I was wondering if there are stories or scenarios either in your personal life or in the music world where you can talk about having a situation show up that you could have had one set of responses, but instead you allowed yourself to let some other wisdom speak to you and make a different choice.
Well, again, I would say that that practice, and it is a practice. Remember that you're not going to get it right and then, I got it done. I'm perfect. That doesn't exist. It doesn't exist. It's a practice every day. You get better because you practice it more, sort of like the guitar or baseball or whatever. You get better at it, and it's easier as you practice it. But this started for me when I was going through chemo and getting diagnosed with cancer. I had, for a few months before I actually got cancer, I started having this new thought sort of journey that I was having. And so when I was diagnosed, I clearly saw, I have a choice here how I'm going to respond to a diagnosis of cancer. I can choose to believe that I am sick, that something is wrong with me, something happened to me, and I am diseased, and I need medicine or acid to kill it. and I could die. I could choose to give all my energy and my attention to that.
Which is exactly what the Western medical model encourages.
It does. You know, the Western
I told you all my wife is an herbalist.
Yeah, she's amazing. But you know, the blessed Western medicine, if you get your leg cut off, they're really good at putting it back on. So you know,
herbs aren't going to help that.
Yeah, no, herbs aren't going to put the leg back on. So there's great stuff. But when it comes to the degenerative diseases are all start when we are out of balance, when our acid alkaline. It all starts with acid. And so when I saw that I could tell that story, or I could tell the story of, look, this thing came along in my life and it made me stop, and it made me change, and it made me reach for health, and it made me want to get better and healthier, and it turned, and I just started going, wow, it's whatever story I want it to be. And if I wake up and tell that story, when people look at me and cry, I'm like, oh, I'm not dying, the cancer's out of me, I'm good, you know, it's all that. The more energy, the more I fed that story, the more it became my story. And then I started doing something like, wait a minute, maybe I could just tell a different story wherever I go, whatever I do. And I started in airports, because I spend a lot of time in airports. And I would sit there, and a person would come into my field of vision. And we don't really realize that our little brains are instantly, you know, person, blah, 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 fear, no, I don't know, you know, before a second has gone by, you've had all these thoughts. So that stimulus, like you said, between stimulus and reaction, it's a practice to learn, okay, stimulus is coming in, okay, I'm gonna pause. Let me tell a different story. And I remember one time I was waiting for a plane in Seattle, and all of a sudden this guy comes in, literally in trash bags. Okay, he was like, obviously dirty, and he sits, and we're in the Seattle airport. So I'm thinking, oh my God, this guy had to go through, you know, security and everything, and he's obviously, so I said, okay, here's a great opportunity for me to tell a different story. It's like, okay, this man is multi-billionaire, you know, and I started just saying, and he's decided to complete that money does not make him happy. I've met plenty of people with lots of money that it doesn't make them happy, and he is trying something, and I just went on this whole different story. He got on the plane, I never saw him again, but I don't have an interesting ending to that story. It would be good if I did. But it's just an example of telling a different story. When you get that stimulus, tell a different story. What can I say? Oh, this person, it also, when my father passed away, it was a very sad day. I remember it was beautiful, and I saw him there. And when I left the hospital, I made a bad turn in front of someone, and they honked at me. And I remember thinking, I'm never going to honk at anyone ever again, because they might have lost their father that day. So you change that. It's like, no, he thought I was cutting him off or something. Tell a different story.
Yes, and some of it is realizing our own power as storytellers. We're telling ourselves stories all day long. And you can always tell yourself a different story. Often the story we're telling ourselves is just completely made up and doesn't have any supporting information and comes from, you know, the negative self-talk. Tell yourself a different story for sure. And I like to talk about how it's also helpful to be curious about what we would reject. And in this era, this is very important, because we often are trained, particularly in political circles, if you start having a conversation about issues, to have your set of talking points and be prepared to win the argument based on what you believe and convincing the other person that your merits are better than theirs. And when we get into that place, we're completely missing every opportunity it is to be curious about each other and to understand why someone holds a different belief. Can we instead start from a place of curiosity about, why do you think and believe this way? How were you raised differently than me that gives you a different perspective? Can we start in a place honoring the fact that most of us as humans on this planet have at least a handful of core values we share in common? And if we start from that place, a place of gratitude. One of my favorite podcasts and please listen to the show if you haven't had a chance to. We're in our second season. Melissa kicks us off both seasons. But we have a range of interesting dialogues with people, including in season 1, an episode with an uber-conservative Republican member of Congress named Andy Harris. And he and I spend an entire hour attempting and successfully having a conversation about gun control from 2 very different perspectives. And as I was heading in for this conversation, I was a little bit nervous about, well, how can I get us in a place to even share in a meaningful way without it just being, this is my talking points and what I think and these are his and what he thinks, and it's just going to be the same thing that everyone hears all the time anyway. What manifested out of this beautiful conversation came from an unexpected request that I asked him if he would share in a gratitude practice with me when we started the show. And he was a little bit like, what? And we talked a little bit about things that we were grateful for. And in then honoring this conversation and giving me a chance to say, oh, that's really beautiful that you care about this and that, like sharing in gratitude with him about our freedoms. His family comes from a communist regime that he was glad he was of a generation that was raised in this country with our freedoms. I started the dialogue off with an opportunity to connect on what we agreed with. And when we do that, it's so much easier to have a more civil dialogue about the things that we disagree with. It allows you to begin in that heart space, that once we connect with someone in that heart space, it makes it a lot harder to start throwing slings and arrows at each other when we start with a recognition of each other's humanity, even if we might be polar opposites. There's always some little grain of something that you can get when you're having an openness to that dialogue. And so having that connection to gratitude and telling yourself a different story are definitely both key pieces to this as well. I have no idea how we're doing on time.
We've got 15 minutes.
Thank you, Linda. We have 15 minutes? Okay.
The time
Oh, the timer's over there. Okay, great. Oh yeah, we're
professional.
Okay. So professional. We can tell who's been on stage more often. Okay, so we're going to keep this dialogue going for the remainder of this show, but a couple of points I want to make before anyone starts to leave. This is the first of 2 workshops, and so please join us on Saturday. Join me. Melissa's a very busy woman. I'm honored that she even was able to participate in one. But in the second one, the whole thought was, let's do one where we have a dialogue that talks about some of these principles. Let you noodle on them for a few days. And then in the second workshop, it's going to be Q&A, audience participation. And I will help guide you and have conversations about, you can bring forward any particular examples that are going on in your own lives for us to further jump into this. I invite you to be a part of the community that we are building to have an approach towards radical love in our politics. On the cards that have been handed out are all the social media information on how to follow us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Please do that. It's where I post new information about new guests on the show, and for you to follow, download, subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Google, Stitcher, anywhere you get your podcasts, you'll find Soul Force Politics. So putting that little commercial piece aside, but it's important. I want to make the connection with you here one that is lasting beyond the cruise, so that we can keep doing this work together. Thank you. Melissa, in the time that we have left, because I could ask you a million questions.
I could answer them.
Is there something I haven't asked you about that's burning in your heart related to all of this work that you want to drop some little gold here on the stage before our time finishes?
Well, it's interesting because I get such a positive feedback from everyone on the cruise, and You know, I hugged about 1,000 of you today.
Doesn't she give the best hugs? Yeah. You know, you can hug like that too. You know when Melissa's hugging you and what you're feeling isn't just because, oh my God, I'm hugging Melissa Etheridge. I was kind of like Linda is there, wasn't I, for a second? What you're feeling is a hug from someone who is sharing her presence with you. She's in her body, she's in her spirit, she's connected to her heart, and when she's hugging you, she's introducing her heart to yours. And what you're feeling is this genuine hug. And I would encourage you to start hugging people the same way. Hug people you think that you would never want to hug. One of the podcasts you're going to get after this cruise, I had a beautiful conversation this week with Crystal Bowersox. And one of the things she does at her shows is, because she has a whole range of people that follow her music, conservative to LGBTQ, and she at one phase of the concert, she'll have everyone introduce yourself to a stranger, you know? And then she's like, okay, here comes phase two. It's just, everyone's like, huh? And she asked them to hug each other. And they're like, oh, okay, but they do. And like she's like, you can start feeling the vibration of the place just picking up. And then the third one, which really gets people out of their comfort zone, she asked each person to look that person in the eye and tell them that you love them. And when that happens, the whole place magically, completely transforms. There's no more us and them division anymore. Yeah. And this is this world that we're dreaming of.
Yeah, and this is the world of this book. And it will always be my intention to bring as many people here that need and want that balance. It was funny, they said that it was 70% men, yet I look at this boat and it's very balanced. It's still, like I said, there's energy, and there's
plenty of women on this boat carrying some male energy.
yeah. That's what I mean. So it's we are changing the way that we look at things. We are changing the way we define things, and we can start on this boat. I bring my friends Jerome and Kathy because I want them to see. They don't hang out with a lot of lesbians, and a lot of lesbians don't hang out with a lot of people of color, and it's just good to start going, oh my God, you're just like me. You laugh at the same, you make me laugh. We care about the same things, and I try to meet as many people as I can from all different walks of life. It is enriching. Travel, travel, it opens your eyes. And then when you see someone whose light is dimmer, and that's the way to look at it, don't think of them as, oh, they're against me. That's taking it personally. When we take things personally, power gone, game over. Just when you look at someone, oh, their light is dimmer, they just see it darker. You be the light. Or not. You don't have to take on. You can't make yourself sick enough to make a sick person well. So I always come from the place of the best thing I can do for my fellow men and women and everything in between is to be an example, to just be an example. So every time you come up and you hug me and you tell me how much something I did, said, or whatever, the music means to you, how much of an influence. That's my intention. I want to inspire you to. I want some of what she's got, and that's all I have is an attention to balance. And now go search for that, because it's that search, it's that journey that is life. There's no end. When it's over, it's over. Then there's all beliefs about after that. But so it is about the journey. You don't want to get it done. You just want to. You want it to just. You want to dream more. You want to bring more in. And so while you're doing that, make your light shine. Otherwise, if you find yourself thinking, you're going to get what you pay attention to. I mean, let's think about why we call it pay attention. Your attention is worth everything. Your attention is priceless. You give your attention to someone, something, that is what you're going to get. That's what you're going to have.
Energy flows where attention goes.
She's good with the rhymes like that.
I want to encourage all of you to become better connected to your own lasso of truth. How many of you were fans of the Wonder Woman movie when it came out, right? And I remember thinking at the time, I did some workshops on women's empowerment, and I was like, oh man, how awesome would it be to have one of these lassos of truth? And I realized, oh my God, each of us do. It's your heart. And there are moments, and you all will have them in your life. And I know that as I start speaking about this, you'll have your memories where it's come up for you. You know where you've been in that moment where something needs to be said, but you have to take a risk to say it, and your heart starts beating 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you start questioning whether or not you have the courage to actually say what needs to be said or not? Listen to your lasso of truth. When that happens, it's because you are being prompted by something in the universe and inside of you to speak and bring a truth forward. Be willing to take those risks, because magical things happen when they do. And I can give you so many examples. When I was in the legislature, we were working on getting marriage equality passed in Maryland before the Supreme Court did it for all of us. Thank you very much, everyone. In Maryland, we were going down this legislative path, and one of the first years that it was becoming really obvious that we had a chance to potentially be successful, there were a group of conservatives in the legislature that put out a notice that they were putting a marriage caucus together. And an open invitation for all the legislators that wanted to protect marriage to show up. And I was a freshman legislator at the time, and some of these conservative members, when I walked in the room, thought, oh my God, militant lesbian from Tacoma Park, which is a really progressive community in Maryland, is showing up to blow up this meeting. I sat down, I listened really respectfully to everything they had to say, and they were going around the room talking about why you were there, and everyone kind of talked about sanctity of marriage and why gay and lesbians can't, they did what you would expect them to do. And when it was my turn, they just sort of looked at me like, oh my God, what's happening next? And I said, I really appreciate that we're contemplating putting a caucus together to protect marriage, because my parents have been married for 45 years, and they have the most amazing marriage and beautiful example of what can come from dedication and love. And I think that marriage is really important. And my wife and I, who have been married now for 7 years, share in this and use their marriage as an example. And if this caucus is coming together to promote policies on family and medical leave and good adoption laws, and I start naming all these legislative proposals that we could do to strengthen families and protect marriages. I said, if this caucus is for that, I'm 100% on board with you. But if instead this caucus might be put together just to say that some people in our state don't deserve same protections and support under the law when tough times happen, like no, you can't visit your spouse in the hospital, or no, you can't ride in the ambulance, or you can't make end-of-life decisions. If this is going to be about trying to keep protections away from some people, I'm sorry, I think that's discrimination, and I really think that in that case we shouldn't have this caucus. Dead silence. Lots of uncomfortable shifting in seats. And they never formed the caucus. when we stand up and speak our truth and take a risk, we sometimes can form really beautiful relationships. One of the same guys who was sitting in that room, who was the head of the pro-life caucus, I eventually reached out to him with an idea on how we could lower the abortion rates in the state by increasing family planning services. And normally, family planning is a buzzword that makes people go into their corners. But I had a conversation with him and data that showed, oh, guess what? If we limit unwanted pregnancies, abortion rates fall. And so instead of fighting with each other about this, can we work together to actually expand health coverage for women to try to keep this from happening? And we passed the Family Planning Expansion Act because we worked together to do it.
That's radical love.
That is radical love. Because we started from a place of honoring and respecting each other. I didn't go in trying to change his vision in mind about what his values were, and I was just asking him to respect where I was coming from, but finding that place where our values overlapped, where we could get beyond talking across each other and actually collaborate to achieve something. And if you come on Saturday at 1 o'clock in the Spinnaker Lounge, we will dive much more deeply. I have a lot more examples, but I want to engage you in your life examples. Tell your friends, this is really important work. We're seeing people all across the country engage in Soul Force Politics mission. I invite you to be a member of our community and to start bringing your light out into the world. You're showing it on the boat in amazing ways, and I want you to take it back home where it's even harder. But knowing that you're connected to a whole community of people who will continue to love and support you in that work. And we're always loved and supported by Melissa. I thank you every time I have a chance for everything that you've taught me and helped me to bring this mission forward.
Oh, it's been totally my pleasure. You just make me so happy. And my friends, when I say choose only love, that's what I mean. You've got love or fear. Choose only love. Walk that path. Choose love. However you respond, come from love. Start with that. Inspire. You're going to see health. You're going to see joy. I love you all. I want to thank Heather, and you go see her on Saturday. You learn a lot. You feel good.
Thank you so much.